My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 34 years old. 16 years ago, my parents stood in the middle of our living room, looked me in the eye, and decided I no longer existed. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Legally. Officially. Completely erased. I remember the exact moment because it didn't feel real at first. My mother was standing near the fireplace, her hands trembling but her voice steady, while my father sat at his desk like he was finalizing a business deal. "If you walk out of this house without agreeing," he said, "you are no longer our daughter." I thought it was a bluff. I was 18. I still believed, somewhere deep down, that parents loved their children unconditionally. I didn't understand yet that in my family, love had terms and conditions, and I had just violated them. The condition was simple: marry Daniel Reeves, the son of my father's business partner. A merger disguised as a marriage. I said no. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, no. And that was enough. By the time the clock hit 9:40 p.m., I had one suitcase, $120 in my wallet, and a document my father forced me to sign, stating that I was voluntarily severing all ties to the Cole family. I didn't even fully read it. I just wanted to leave before I broke down in front of them. As I stepped outside, my mother said the words I would hear echo in my head for the next 16 years, "From this moment on, you are dead to us." The door closed. And just like that, Hannah Cole, their daughter, ceased to exist. For the first year, I thought they would come back. I thought there would be a phone call, a message, something. There wasn't. Instead, I found out through an old friend that my parents told everyone I had moved abroad. Europe, specifically. "She's studying art in Florence," my mother had apparently told the neighbors. Florence. I had never even been on a plane. Meanwhile, I was sleeping on a friend's couch in a cramped apartment above a nail salon, working double shifts at a diner where the smell of grease clung to my clothes no matter how many times I washed them. I learned quickly that survival doesn't leave room for pride. I took whatever work I could find: waitressing, cleaning offices, data entry jobs that paid just enough to keep me afloat. I stopped introducing myself as Hannah Cole because hearing my last name felt like reopening a wound. I became just Hannah. No history. No family. No past. Years passed. Slowly at first, then all at once. I built something out of nothing, not because I was brave, but because I had no other choice. By 24, I had saved enough to enroll in night classes for business administration. By 27, I landed a junior analyst position at a small consulting firm. By 30, I was running my own boutique financial advisory company, specializing in helping small businesses restructure debt and scale sustainably. Ironically, I became exactly what my father had always wanted: a strategic thinker, a negotiator, someone who understood leverage. The difference was, I did it without him. Without them. And without ever looking back. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Because the truth is, I never threw away that document. The one I signed the night they erased me. I kept it in a fireproof folder, along with every other piece of evidence from that time: emails, letters, even a voicemail my mother left 3 days after I left, not to ask if I was safe, but to remind me not to contact any relatives because it would complicate the narrative. I didn't know why I kept those things. Maybe part of me needed proof that it had actually happened. That I hadn't imagined being discarded like a problem to be solved. 16 years later, on a Tuesday afternoon at exactly 2:17 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. I was in the middle of reviewing a client's portfolio, and unknown calls usually meant spam or sales pitches. But something, call it instinct, call it curiosity, made me answer. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade said my name. "Hannah." My chest tightened instantly. I didn't need them to introduce themselves. I knew. "This is your father." The words felt foreign, like a language I used to speak fluently but had forgotten. "I know who this is," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. Another pause. We need to talk. Not, how are you? Not, are you okay? Just, we need to talk. Some things never change. I agreed to meet them. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Not because I missed them. But because after 16 years of silence, curiosity is a powerful thing. I needed to know why now. Why me? Why this? We met 3 days later at a private conference room in a downtown hotel. Neutral territory. That's what my father had called it. As if we were two opposing parties negotiating a contract. In a way, we were. They looked older. That was the first thing I noticed. My father's hair had gone completely gray, his posture slightly hunched. My mother's face, once perfectly composed, carried lines that hadn't been there before. Time had touched them, just as it had touched me. But the dynamic in the room felt exactly the same. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother slightly behind him. Me across from them, like a guest who wasn't entirely welcome. You've done well for yourself, my father said, glancing at the file in front of him. Of course he had researched me. Of course he knew everything. I built a life, I replied. You weren't part of it. My mother flinched slightly. My father didn't react. We won't waste time, he continued. There's a situation that requires your involvement. I almost laughed. 16 years of silence, and here we were, straight to business. What kind of situation? He slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were legal documents. Property deeds. Trust agreements. And at the center of it all, a clause highlighted in yellow. I read it once. Then again. And then a third time, just to be sure I wasn't misunderstanding. The estate my grandfather had established, valued at nearly $3.5 million, could not be accessed, sold, or restructured without the unanimous consent of all listed heirs. Including me. My name was there, printed clearly, Hannah Elizabeth Cole. You're listed as a beneficiary, my father said. A technicality we weren't able to amend after your departure. A technicality. That's what I was to them now. A legal inconvenience. And you need my signature, I said slowly. To release the funds and restructure the estate, he confirmed. Yes. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. 16 years ago, they erased me. Now, suddenly, I existed again, because they needed something. What happened to Florence? I asked. My mother looked confused. The story you told everyone, I clarified. About me studying abroad. She looked down at her hands. People needed an explanation, she murmured. Of course they did. We're prepared to compensate you, my father said, cutting through the moment. He placed a check on the table. Blank. Signed. My breath caught, not because of the money, but because of the audacity. Fill in any amount you consider fair, he said. In exchange for your signature. I stared at the check. 16 years of silence reduced to a transaction. Do you even hear yourselves? I asked quietly. You erased me. You told the world I didn't exist. And now you're sitting here trying to buy me like I'm an asset. We're offering you an opportunity, my father replied. To resolve this cleanly. Cleanly. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. And if I refuse? I asked. My father's expression hardened slightly. That would complicate matters for everyone involved. There it was. The pressure. The expectation. The same dynamic, just repackaged. I closed the folder and slid it back toward him. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. We don't have much time, he added. You'll have your answer soon, I replied, and walked out. That night, I opened the fireproof folder for the first time in years. The document I had signed at 18 was still there. Yellowed at the edges, but intact. I read every word carefully this time. And that's when I saw it. The clause I had overlooked all those years ago. It stated that any termination of familial ties would be considered null and void if coercion could be demonstrated. Coercion. The word pulsed in my mind. I remembered the pressure. The ultimatum. The threat of being thrown out with nothing. I hadn't left voluntarily. I had been forced. And if I could prove that, everything changed. Over the next week, I gathered evidence. Old messages. Witness statements from the friend whose couch I had slept on. Even a recording I didn't remember keeping, a voicemail from my father, sent the night I left, stating clearly that I had no choice if I wanted to remain part of the family. Piece by piece, I built a case. Not for revenge. For truth. When I met them again, it wasn't in a hotel. It was in my office. My space. My terms. My father noticed the difference immediately. The confidence. The control. Have you made a decision? He asked. Yes, I said, placing my own folder on the table. I have. I opened it and turned it toward them. Legal documents. Prepared. Filed. Ready. I'm not signing your papers, I said calmly. I'm contesting them. My mother's face drained of color. My father's jaw tightened. On what grounds? He demanded. Coercion, I replied. I didn't leave voluntarily. I was forced out under threat and pressure. Which makes the document I signed invalid. I watched the realization settle in. Slowly. Heavier with each passing second. You don't want a signature, I continued. You want control. And for 16 years, you had it. Not anymore. The room was silent. What do you want? My father finally asked. Not angrily. Not dismissively. Just, quietly. For the first time, he wasn't dictating terms. He was asking. I took a breath. I want the truth acknowledged, I said. Publicly. Privately. Everywhere. I want you to admit what you did. That you erased your own daughter to protect your image. My mother started crying. My father didn't interrupt. And the estate? He asked. We handle it fairly, I said. As equals. Not as strangers. Not as a problem to be eliminated. Another long silence.